An unemployment rate stuck above 7%. And they say 7%, but quite frankly, if I had more time, I could show you that the unemployment rate is really 15%. Labor participation rate in this country is at a 30-year low. The number of part-time jobs right now is through the roof. The people that are working aren't even working full-time. We've reached a critical point in this country. And if we don't do something, if we don't stand up, if we don't do some of the things that your leader was talking about, Joel was talking about, we have to do something. We don't need to do something next year. We got to do something right now. Now, I noticed something. About every 4 years in this country, people get pretty excited. About every 4 years, right?
Yeah.
We all get excited. You can't even go to the bathroom without somebody telling you who they're going to vote for. You can't go to the water cooler without somebody talking about the debate last night. Every 4 years, we all get pretty excited. And on the first Wednesday in November of every 4 years, each and every one of us go back to sleep. We all go back to sleep. Most of us do. Maybe not the people in this room, but a lot of us do. And then we sit and we scratch our heads and we wonder, why are they doing that in Raleigh? Why are they doing that in Washington, D.C.? They're doing it because you're not paying attention. That's why they're doing it. Because we're asleep. So we got to wake up. We got to get involved like Joel talked about. Now there's a lot of information that we're pushing out there. You can go to our website at NCEnergyForum.com where you can get a tremendous amount of facts around energy. Because there's a lot of myths now. Now the environmentalists, they've got people like Matt Damon making these blockbuster movies about how we don't need to be going after energy in this country. So we got to combat some of that. And that's what we're doing at our website. You can go get real facts to share. I think this gentleman here was talking about his environmentalist friend. You can go get real facts about hydraulic fracturing and share it with someone like that. Real facts. We also need you to join the conversation. I know everybody in here on Facebook. 7 billion people or something in the world, and they said I think 2 billion of them on Facebook now. So everybody in here on Facebook, join our Facebook page if you are. If you happen to be one of those people. There's a discussion, there's a dialogue every day there about energy. If you're not on Facebook, if you're one of the younger folks and you're on Twitter, because they say the young people like Twitter, we're on Twitter. We're bringing the conversation there too. One of the most important things you can do is you can do what this kind lady Virginia did. You can set up this kind of a meeting and invite us out to talk. Because we're working hard to try to get out and talk to as many people as we can about what the opportunity is and what's going on. But we need kind folks to set up these kind of meetings. Whether it's church groups, community groups, at your house. You can invite people in to learn more about this. That's how you can get involved. And then last but certainly not least, and I know a lot of people think this doesn't work. I heard Joel talk about it. Write and call your legislator. Ask your legislator the tough question. Where do you stand on energy? What are your ideas around energy? And I'm going to tell you right now, most legislators cannot articulate their position on energy. And the only reason why they can't is because you've never forced them to. And until you start making it an issue, they won't make it an issue. And it can't be the one phone call and, hey, I forgot about it. I can't send the one letter and then forget about it. You got to stay on these folks. You got to get your friends to stay on these folks. Joel gave you a great idea, writing letters to the editor. That's great. Anything you can do to keep that dialogue going in public and hold your elected leaders accountable. And if they cannot articulate their position, you go find somebody to run for office that can. And I'm not sitting here telling you that you're going to do this and everything's going to change overnight. It doesn't work that way. You've got to be patient, you got to do this consistently, and you've got to be a part of the discussion. And we'll do everything we can at the North Carolina Energy Forum to support you. All right? So I've said a bunch in the last, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes. Yeah, I'm about 30 minutes on. And I want to reserve some time here at the end because I know there's got to be some burning questions out there. So with that said, I'll pause for a moment and see if there's any questions out there in the audience.
What's the website again?
NCEnergyForum.com. WilsonNCTeaParty.com. Yes, sir.
Can you explain what fracking is?
I knew that was your question. You wanted me to go through that process. So, you know, to talk a little bit about the hydraulic fracturing process, probably the simplest way to put it, and in fact, before I say this, if you go to our website, there's a YouTube video there too, where we actually give you, it's sort of an animation on how the process works. It's about a 3 or 4 minute video. But the best way to put it is essentially, they dig a well. There are deposits of natural gas underground. These deposits are located deep underground. They're below the water tables. A lot of people think that these deposits are located pretty close to the water tables, but they're not. They're much deeper than that. And essentially what they do is they dig a well, and they do pump a solution down there. And it's in this solution, in this mixture, that causes fracturing to occur in the shale rock formation underground. When that fracturing occurs, the natural gas comes out, and they capture the natural gas, and that's essentially how they extract it from underground. It's a very simplified way to put it. Now, some of the environmentalists, like your friend, what they would say, some of the things they're going to say, number one, that when you start doing hydraulic fracturing, you contaminate groundwater. That's not true. You do not contaminate groundwater. Now, hydraulic fracturing is something that a lot of people just started talking about in the last 10 years. The reason why they've been talking about it in the last 10 years, do you remember when oil prices got so high? Well, all of a sudden, this technology started making a lot more sense because oil prices and energy costs had gotten so high. But the actual technology, hydraulic fracturing, that process, has been around for 60 years. It's not new. It's just a lot of people didn't know about it. There's actually been over 1 million wells in this country dug using this process with very little or insignificant impact to the environment. And in fact, the Obama administration, this happened in the Obama administration because they were trying to prove that hydraulic fracturing was not a good process. And his own EPA director, Linda Jackson, came back and said there is no scientific evidence to link hydraulic fracturing to environmental pollution or contamination. This happened in his administration. So we got to believe it. If his administration came back and said it, then God Almighty, that was their chance to really get us on this thing, right? So that's sort of how the process works. The other thing, have you ever seen the movie Gasland? You ever seen that movie? There's an older gentleman in the movie. He turns on his water faucet and he lights it on fire. Yeah, and again, a lot of people say that's connected to the contamination that happens in the groundwater. What the EPA found out was that, again, you've got natural gas deep underground, you've got water tables there. There can be a natural contamination that happens, but it's not connected to the process itself. The other thing that you'll hear folks say is, I've even heard people say that hydraulic fracturing causes earthquakes. That's not true either. There's no scientific evidence that hydraulic fracturing causes any kind of earthquakes. You will also hear people talk about, they would talk about the slant drilling process with hydraulic fracturing. What that means is they go underground and they actually drill next to them in order to extract energy. And what that's allowed to happen here in our country, we thought a lot of oil wells were expired, but through slant drilling, we're actually able to go into oil wells that we thought were depleted. And they're actually taking energy resources out of those wells too. But again, there's a tremendous number of myths out there about hydraulic fracturing, and we really try to tackle a lot of that at our website. I saw your hand going up again.
I want to know what's taking place in North Carolina.
Well, that's a great question. Her question was, what's happening here in North Carolina? Actually, nothing. There's been a moratorium on hydraulic fracturing here in this state for probably 30 years. So about 30 years ago, there was some seismic testing that was done onshore and offshore to try to get a feel for what might be here. There is a basin here, so we do know there's natural gas here. It's primarily located in the center part of the state, in Lee, Chatham, Orange County, I think parts of Surrey, Stokes, and those areas. But there is a basin here in the state of North Carolina. But the moratorium has prevented us from doing anything. You can't do testing, you can't do anything. So a couple of years ago, we had Senate Bill 820 that got passed. Senate Bill 820 lifted the moratorium. And what that did was create what we now call the Energy and Mining Commission. And the EMC is writing the rules on what's going to be the process to start going after some of that energy that's there in the center part of the state. Last legislative session, we were able to get Senate Bill 76 passed, which obviously sort of clarified some of that. And what we really wanted to do was have a date certain so that energy companies knew when they could start moving in the state and going after some of the energy that's there. Now the offshore, which is the much bigger play, the onshore play is a small play, but the offshore play, which is much larger, you can't do anything without the federal government saying it's okay to lease an area in the Atlantic outer continental shelf. The federal government does a leasing plan, what they call a leasing plan. They do that every 5 years. So what we're hoping is that plan comes up for renewal here soon, to 2017 to 2022. So we're trying to get our area included in that leasing plan. But so far, the Obama administration has again signaled that they are not going to allow any offshore energy exploration.
Or anything else ever.
Now, how close in from the coast can you go? Because it's my understanding several of the river basins have got gas deposits under them also.
Yeah, one of the questions we get a lot is, you know, if I'm one of those people that love to go hang out at Atlantic Beach or whatever, you know, am I now going to see oil rigs off the coast? And I don't know if you've ever been down to the Gulf and been to Louisiana and some of those places, but those wells are what we call deep water wells, so they tend to be 50, 60, 75 miles off the coast. There's even a lot of energy companies are now realizing that even further off the coast is where a lot of the reserves are. So they're even putting them 200 miles off the coast at this point. So it's not something that you actually see if you're standing on the beach. Now down in the Gulf Coast, they will allow rigs as close as 3 miles out. And the reason why they started doing that in the Gulf is because anytime a rig is beyond 3 miles out, you have to share revenue with the federal government. So the royalties go to the state, half go to the state and the other half go to the feds. So what Louisiana said is, okay, if we put it 3 miles out, that they get to keep 100% of the revenue. So they've started doing some of that where there's rigs a little closer, mainly because they're trying to keep more of the revenue. But the rigs that really produce the larger amounts of production are the rigs that are located further out. And what they also find is that most fish love them. Fishermen love it because these things become sort of natural, like coral reefs for fish, and they sort of hang around them. So a lot of the fishermen will actually go and fish around these things because that's where all the fish is. And even with the big, you know, the Deepwater Horizon spill that happened down in the Gulf a few years ago. I was in Myrtle Beach a few weeks ago, and there was a lady that's a part of the Gulf Coast Energy Council down there. She was there speaking with me. And she said that most of that's really been cleaned up, and you know they're back out there fishing and shrimping and catching oysters and so forth. So it's not the kind of permanent damage to the environment that some folks would have you believe. Now, one of the things that we've advocated here, going back to North Carolina, that we advocated here in North Carolina when we did the latest Senate bill, was that we wanted a risk mitigation bank to be created, so that if you did have an accident, right? If some energy company ended up spilling oil or had a natural gas accident, there would be dollars already in reserve. The energy companies would fund the bank. This wouldn't be taxpayer dollars. There would be private dollars already in reserve for that cleanup. And then anything above and beyond what the risk mitigation bank could handle, that specific energy company would have to clean it up, just like they did down in the Gulf. So BP has spent about $25 billion cleaning up that spill and have committed to spending whatever it takes to get it completely resolved. You know, one other thing, I just thought about this, one other thing folks, a lot of environmentalists will tell you is that the solution that I talked about that gets pumped into the ground that causes the fractures, they'll say, hey, well, you know, you're pumping this unknown substance into the ground. Well, and you'll see this on the website, 99% of that solution that gets pumped into the ground is just water and sand. That's all it is. 1% is a proprietary blend of chemicals. And here in North Carolina, what we did with the latest Senate bill is energy companies that are going to do hydraulic fracturing in North Carolina, they don't want to reveal what those chemicals are to each other. It's the same if you worked at McDonald's, they don't want Burger King to know what's in that Big Mac sauce, right? Coke doesn't want Pepsi to know what they've got in theirs and vice versa. But what we did is we said, okay, energy companies will be required to disclose what are in those chemicals, at least to the state. They don't have to disclose it to each other because we don't want to create any kind of unfair competition. But if we have a spill and we have an accident here, we need to know what those chemicals are, right? So that we can get out there and clean it up and do something about it. So we've actually built that into the legislation here in North Carolina. my argument to the General Assembly was, you know, we've had a lot of states go ahead and go before us. So it's an opportunity to learn from what they did wrong, and we get it right here while we're writing our rules. But the environmentalists will tell you, they just say no, 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 we don't want to do anything. And I'm telling you, I don't believe no is a real energy policy. It's just not. And not yet isn't going to work any longer. You know, I was down in Scotland County speaking to a community group down there. You want to know what the unemployment rate is in Scotland County? 17%. Do you think they want to hear not yet? Do you think they want to hear no? No, those folks want to go back to work down there. So we need to be doing something to create jobs in this state for those folks. Yes, ma'am.
I'm from California, and the first couple months I was here, we had an earthquake in North Carolina.
So there is a fault, yeah. That's right.
And then, because I'm originally from California, the earthquake didn't bother me, but everybody stood outside.
Yeah.
and they were afraid.
I didn't know we had an earthquake. I just knew something happened.
That was an earthquake.
Yeah.
But it was so deep.
Yeah.
It was 3 miles deep or more.
Yes, ma'am.
So, do we have early
Detection systems for that. I honestly, I don't know. I don't believe, unfortunately, I don't think that particular quake was connected to anything to do with energy production. So I'm sure the National Weather Service or something, maybe they have some early detection for when that happens. I remember when it happened, they did come out and was able to tell us exactly what happened and what the Richter scale measurement was and all that kind of stuff.
It was
So
3 miles deep.
yes,
And
ma'am.
it was,
Nancy.
what?
It's okay.
Okay.
But it doesn't have anything to do with what you're
We're
talking
talking
about.
It doesn't, no, ma'am. It doesn't.
Thank you.
Any other questions or? Yes, sir.
I'll proceed my question with a comment, and that is that I am in favor of drilling, but I am from Bradford County, Pennsylvania,
Yes, sir.
and it's probably more familiar to you maybe than to most other people in the room.
Around the Marcellus Shale.
Around the Marcellus Shale area, if you've seen Gasland, the movie Gasland, the guy starts there. He starts in Dimock, Pennsylvania. I live 15 minutes from Dimock.
Yep.
And I believe that the process is safe. But part of the problems that I've seen, that I've experienced, and I know people who have experienced, is that things that come along with that. There's massive oversight in the process.
That's right.
It's a government agency that oversees it, and it's not without corruption.
That's right.
And there's plenty of people that are willing to spill something on the ground and kick a little dirt over it. And they do that on a massive scale.
Yeah.
And so the problems that come with drilling are not limited to drilling. And that's what the detractors will focus on. The tree huggers will tell you that drilling is terrible because it poisons the environment.
Yeah.
It's not the drilling that poisons the environment. It's the guy who is talking on a cell phone and doesn't turn the thing off.
And you have a spill,
And you have a spill.
Yeah.
There's things like that can happen. And there's also another issue that came up was that it does bring a lot of jobs to the area.
Yes, sir.
But one of the things that we saw was that they brought a lot of workers to the area.
Yeah.
50% of the oil workers that work in the area are from Texas and from North Carolina, like right around here. There was a lot of issues with undocumented workers in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
We already have that problem here,
Yeah.
and that's going to get, that could potentially become a lot worse.
Well,
What I mean to say is that while I agree that that it's a good thing and I believe it's necessary, I think what we need to pay attention to are some of the things that are the side effects, are the residuals from the industry and from the process and oversight. And I agree that Pennsylvania made a lot of mistakes, and you pointed out that we had the benefit of seeing what they did.
That's right.
And New York has done the same thing. New York has refused to allow hydraulic fracturing up until very recently. And I believe that they're in the process of.
I think they're writing rules around it now. They are, yeah.
Dimmock, Pennsylvania is 20 minutes from the New York border.
Yeah.
And so it's right there. And the people in the southern tier of upstate New York are waiting because they've seen what has happened. They've seen the profits.
Yeah, let me
from
sort
the
of tackle
land.
some of what you just said. I don't know if I can get to all that. I don't even know if there was a
There's a
question
lot.
in there.
No, there's a lot. There's a lot.
But in terms of some of your statements